Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk to you about most, not all, of the things that I did to try to get pregnant. We got pregnant on the third try, so third time's a charm. But we spent 9 months before we started trying, doing our research and just kind of preparing for everything. So it was a whole year-long process from the time that we decided to the time that we got the positive pregnancy test. So today I'm just going to go over all of my little notes on the whole timeline of everything, some of the apps and the products that I used that helped and didn't help, and just everything that went into the logistics of it, not so much the act of it. So let's go ahead and get started. If you are new here, click the subscribe button if you like videos like this, and give it a thumbs up if you like it at the end. And that's that. Let's get into it. So I am now filming this in September of 2019, and I am 20 weeks pregnant tomorrow. I have my big 20-week appointment. Very nervous, but everything has gone really good so far. So we decided in June of 2018 that we wanted to start the process of starting to try. Because I did have an IUD, so I knew that I needed to take care of getting that out and all that other stuff. I also didn't really have a dedicated gynecologist or anything. So I also wanted to, go through the process of actually finding my forever gynecologist so that I would have somebody, because before I was just kind of going to a women's clinic, where you just see whoever, because I really didn't need ever anything major done, just my yearly checkup and all that. So I was very low maintenance before that. So it took me a little bit to find a doctor and then actually get an appointment because she was very booked up. So we decided in June to start the process. I did not get my first gynecologist appointment until the end of July because she was that far booked. Which sucked. I hated waiting because I knew that we had decided, and once we decided to start trying, it was just it's really happening. So on my first appointment, she just did my annual exam, and she's like, since you're a new patient, I can't perform any procedures like removing the IUD until your second appointment. So I waited. So the 30th of July was my first appointment. I was able to go in on the 10th of September, pretty much 1 year ago, last week, to get my IUD removed. So I had the IUD for, I think, 8 years, and it was pretty good. I had some breakouts with the second one, but regardless, overall a very good form of birth control. Let me just say this is my experience. I'm a patient. I'm a normal person. I'm not a doctor. Always consult your doctor for anything, now that that's out of the way. So I had that out September 10th. So my doctor suggested waiting 3 months before we actually started to try, to allow everything to regulate and stuff. I have read of other people saying that they just started right away, got pregnant right away. No big deal, but we wanted to err on the side of caution and at least wait that long. So that would have put us at December as our first official starting to try time. But in the meantime, once the IUD was out and I knew that things were going to start rolling, I got pretty nervous because I had always thought I'm pretty young. I was 31 at the time, turned 32 in November. So I was like, I'm young. I'm not going to have any issues. This is going to be a breeze. And then I made the huge mistake of looking at the internet, because once I went online, dude, there were so many articles from supposed professionals talking about how if you are overweight, even just a little bit, and I'm a fat girl, okay? I'm not even just a little bit overweight. I'm overweight. And they were like, you're basically going to have the hardest time ever getting pregnant. You will most likely never get pregnant without help. You're going to have a very complicated pregnancy, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like shell shocked. I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. It was very discouraging. And that's another reason why I want to make this video, so that if you are like me, while these tips and tricks and like things can help anybody, if you are like me, don't believe all of the crazy things that you read on the internet. Because in my own personal life, I know plenty of fat girls who've gotten pregnant multiple times. And I was thinking, like, well, are they the exception or what? You know, like, is this really going to be that hard, you know? And luckily it wasn't. But reading those things can be very, very discouraging. It can freak you out and it can stress you out, which is not going to help. So ignore those things unless you have a prior medical condition like PCOS, endometriosis, something like that, where you know there's already issues going on with your reproductive system. Try not to worry about all the things that you will read. And also another thing was that a lot of them said that if you are overweight, chances are very high that you are not actually ovulating when you have your cycle. And I was like, wow, really? Like, that seems crazy. I'd never heard that before. And so then I started trying to research ways in which to track your ovulation. And a lot of people talked about, the ovulation predictor kits and stuff like that, which I will go into in a minute. But the only real way to know for sure, aside from buying more kits and stuff, which they're predictors, not really like foolproof. The only like foolproof, inexpensive way to know for sure without having to go to the doctor every month that you are ovulating is to take your temperature. So this is charting your BBT, or your basal body temperature. So as soon as I had my IUD taken out and I had my first period after that, I then immediately following that period started temping. So what you're going to look for with that is that you want to try to take your temperature at the same time every morning. You want to do it before you get up out of bed, before you speak, before you do anything. And if you are the type of person that wakes up in the middle of the night, you need to sleep for at least 3 hours before taking your temperature again. Now, all of this is very rigid, and some of you may know I am a truck driver, so my schedule is not always the same. And sometimes I would get up an hour before the alarm and I have to pee. And then, it's like, oh, great. So I really worried because a lot of people said, oh, the temperatures are going to be way off if you don't take it at exactly the same time, blah, 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 blah. My experience with it was that you did not have to be precise because my temperature shift was very defined. So I was always in the 97 point whatever range before ovulation. After ovulation, I was always in the 98 point something range after. So, my time taking the temperature would vary anywhere from an hour, on either side every day. But I always knew that it was going up. So what I would say is, if you're going to do your BBT to make sure that you're ovulating, try to do it pretty good the first month so you get a baseline of what your values are. And what's going to happen is that the day after you ovulate, at least that's how it worked for me. Some people, the day that they ovulate, it goes up, but it just depends on your own cycle. So at least in my instance, the day after I ovulated, I would always see that temperature rise. So that way you have confirmed that you have indeed ovulated. So that definitely took a weight off my shoulders. I was like, okay, cool. I am ovulating. I don't have to worry about this. Like, everyone's just scaring me for no reason. So there are a couple apps that I use to help me track and chart my BBT. A lot of people use Fertility Friend, which I found to be very unfriendly. I did not like how it worked. I didn't like how it really wanted you to chart a lot of different things, and it faulted you if you did not put in the temperature at the exact time every day, and I hated that. Like, leave me alone. Let me do it the way I want to do it. So I started out using Flow. I'll put the little logo right here so that you can see it, but it was okay. However, I noticed after a few weeks of using it, I noticed that I would go back in the next day and my temperature for the previous day would be gone, just disappeared. And I'm like, well, great. Now I don't remember what that temperature was. So it was very glitchy. There's a lot of people that use that app, but for me, it glitched all the time. Like every few days, I would lose a temperature. And if you're in the crucial time period where you're wanting to make sure that you're ovulating, losing a temperature is no good. So I ended up moving over to the Glow app, and that one was great. It always worked perfectly. You can chart other things like when you have intercourse, when you have your period, how heavy it is, if you're spotting, if you have mucus, all these things. I really only charted my period and my temperature. That was it. And that worked perfectly fine for me. And that app also has an ovulation strip analyzer so that you can actually scan your strips whenever you start ovulation prediction. So it will tell you like, hey, you're at your peak right now, go have some fun, or, oh, your peak is fading right now, better get on top of it. Whatever, I'll just leave that alone. But anyway, that one really helped, and that's the one that I used all the way up until I got my positive test. So like I said, the first thing that I started doing was that temping, because you do need to make sure that you are indeed ovulating. And I'll go ahead and put it out there. It's not just overweight people that need to worry about whether you're ovulating. I feel like that's something that if you are going into trying to conceive in a very like proactive way, and you're not just kind of going with the flow, temp at least for a couple months so that you know for sure that it's happening, because anybody can have an issue with it. I will put a link to the thermometer that I bought. I think it was around $15 on Amazon. You do want one that goes to the 2 numbers past the decimal. You can use 1 number past the decimal. Some people say, oh, it's not enough of a distinction. For me, it was fine. I had a backup one that was like that because mine did shift from 97 to 98. But if you are within the same 97 or 98, then that might start to be an issue for you if you don't have those 2 decimals. So I had been temping the whole time since September, and by the time December rolled around, we kind of got cold feet a little bit. And my husband was like, what if we haven't waited long enough? What if, you know, everything is not going okay down there? Like maybe we should just wait another month or so. And I was like, all right, let's wait. Because it is nerve-wracking, you know, because if the doctor tells you to wait 3 months, you kind of feel like, well, there must be a reason why you should wait. So we waited and we decided that we're going to start in February. And those of you that are not new here, you know that back in February, I actually had a really bad back problem that was very crippling. It was very hard to like move at all. And it lasted for the entire month of February. And I was so distraught, not only because of the pain, but because of not being able to actually start trying, which is when we had planned on. And it really, really, really sucked. So we had to push it back yet again. So then in March, we decided like, okay, this is the time. Now we're going to start trying. So I knew that I wanted to, in addition to knowing for sure that I ovulated, the temperature only tells you that you have ovulated, but it does not tell you that you're going to ovulate. So in order to kind of, you know, bracket in that time, I wanted to pick up an ovulation predictor kit. There's several of these on the market. The first one that I got is the Clear Blue connected ovulation test system. Do I have my thing in here? I don't have my little test this thingy in here, but it's basically a digital one. You can connect it. There's an app and it will like store your information in there for the whole time. So it will tell you if you are not getting ready to, if you're getting ready to, and if you are imminently going to ovulate. So This was expensive. This, I believe, was $50. It came with the holder and then 25 tests. And they recommend that you test like basically once a day. So 25 tests, if you kind of know when you ovulate versus when you have your period, it's easy to not have to use a bunch of tests. But if you don't know those things, if you're not keeping track of everything very closely, you could easily go through this entire box within 2 months, and then you got to buy a whole nother one, and it's expensive. So I would say really keep track of like how many days after your period are you getting that temperature shift, so that you know how long, you know, that period of time is in between, because you're going to ovulate, you know, usually 12 or so days after your period if you have a normal cycle. So I started using this, and honestly, I would not recommend it. I feel like it was at some times faulty, and I feel like it wasn't always the kindest thing to me because it stressed me out so much. There was the first month it did work. It told me, you know, I was having my high time, and then it told me my peak. And then of course the first month, nothing. And then the second month though, it told me low the entire month. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, I was like, did I not ovulate? What is happening? So throughout the second month, it never gave me a peak day. And that was really frustrating. And I was so concerned with it that I actually went out and bought another one of these that's not the Bluetooth connected one, just the basic one. They use the same little strips though. And that one I think was like $30. And even on that one, I was not getting any, you know, peak time. And I'm like, what is going on? This is like really freaking me out. So then I started like Googling and found on Amazon the really inexpensive ones that everyone talks about. And they look like this. You've probably seen them if you are not new to like, you know, all of this pregnancy stuff. So these ones are from Pregmate, and I bought just like a little, I think 25 pack or so the first time. And I noticed that a lot of people use these 2 times a day or even more, but they are very inexpensive. So, you know, it's a lot more easy to use these and not feel bad about like how many you're using. But then after that second month, I ended up having basically used all of them and bought another box of like 100 because I was like, wow, maybe this is going to take a lot longer than I thought. But the box of 100 that I got also came with the pregnancy test ones, just really, really inexpensive pregnancy tests. And I think it was like maybe $25 for 100 tests plus like 10 pregnancy tests or something, or 25, something like that. So it was a really good deal. But I will say that in comparing the clear blue stuff to the really inexpensive Amazon Pregmate ones, I liked the Pregmate ones better. I liked that they were less expensive, and more importantly, that they actually recommend doing them twice a day, whereas Clear Blue was recommending only once a day. And here's the other thing. Clear Blue also said to use your first morning urine, which I actually read later that a lot of these other ovulation predictor tests recommend you not doing, because you do tend to ovulate in the mornings, and then you may miss that surge of LH. So the Pregmate ones actually recommended doing it in mid-morning and then mid-afternoon. So that's what I started doing with these. And I really liked how with these, it was very clear that you could actually see on the strip the progression of the line. So you could see the line getting from light pink all the way to very, very dark. And once it gets all the way dark, then you know that your surge is like coming like within the next 12 hours or so. But anyway, the Pregmate ones are the ones that I would recommend. I will link them down below. Don't waste your money on the clear blue stuff, because it's really better to actually be able to see what it is that you're looking at and notice the progression of them, as opposed to just having a cute little smiley face. So anyway, we tried in March and it did not happen. And weirdly, whenever I got my period, you know, after that first go around, I was so upset. Because I always get my period like first thing in the mornings, like / overnight. So as soon as I got up and I was like, oh, great. I legit was in the bathroom for like 15 minutes. I had a good cry, and then I went to go get groceries. I don't know why. I just expected that it would just happen the first time around, and it was really disappointing that it didn't. I feel like we're all like that though. Like, as much as you say like, oh, as long as it takes, you know, whatever, blah, 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 you still expect it to happen quickly though. So it was really a bummer that it didn't, but the second time around, I had a little bit more, lower expectation of things to happen. I was still disappointed whenever it didn't happen, but I was like, all right, you know, whatever. And then the third time around was totally out of whack. So getting into the heart of this issue, by the third month, I had fully stocked up on my ovulation tests. I had a whole batch of them with me at all times so that I could constantly test. I was determined to make it happen. And I started thinking, like, what if there's something going on with, you know, my pH or something, you know, like what if my fluids are not conducive to the little swimmers and stuff. So I actually bought I bought the pre-seed lubricant stuff, and then I actually forgot to use it because you do kind of have to think ahead, you know, because you have to utilize it before things happen. And I forgot to use it and never ended up needing it because it worked that time. So I can't tell you how good this works. I know it has a lot of great reviews, but I just never got to use it. Another thing that was strange is that I had been taking my temperature for several months at this point. That was like, what, 6 months or something? Everything was always perfect. I always had a temperature shift, always ovulated. And then that May month, actually it was longer, it was like 8 months or something at that point. I've been temping, whatever. This was May now that we're talking about. And I technically ovulated on the 11th. That was when my positive ovulation test occurred. And the next day I did not have a temperature shift. And I was like, wow, this is weird. What's going on here? And I was kind of freaked out about it, and I was annoyed by it, and I was upset and mad and all the feels because I was like, wow, everything has gone perfect. And now whenever I really need it to, I didn't ovulate for some reason. Like, what? Because as you know, once you start trying, like, you realize how short of a time you have to actually make things happen. And if you think about it, in 1 year, you only have 12 opportunities, and that's not very much whenever you really, really want it. So I was annoyed because I was thinking, wow, I didn't ovulate. And there were a couple times during my fertile window, but as far as I can estimate, I believe that the closest one in proximity to my ovulation was actually on Mother's Day, fittingly. So I think that's when the magic happened, but I didn't know it at that point because I didn't have a temperature shift, and I thought maybe it's just delayed. Maybe I didn't ovulate the day that I thought I did. I waited, and the next day I still did not have a temperature shift. And I waited and waited and waited, and I never had a temperature shift. It went up a slight bit, but it was still in the 97s, and previously all of my temperatures had been over 98 after I had ovulated. So I was just like, wow, this is great. I'm not even joking whenever I say that I was so mad that I could spit nails. I was so angry because I didn't know why my body had just betrayed me like that. You have to remember that for the previous 2 months, I had pretty much convinced myself that I was pregnant both times because I was having all these like symptoms, which looking back on it, I was probably completely imagining in my head. But this third time around, I thought I didn't ovulate. I had no symptoms whatsoever, like literally none. And then a few days after I had ovulated, I was standing at the dining room table and I just had this like intense period cramp, and I don't usually have period cramps. My period is very easy, 3 days, textbook, no cramps, just easy breezy. Don't be jealous. Anyway, I was standing there and I got this like intense period cramp, and it lasted for like 10 minutes, and it was just like a wave of just cramping constantly, and it was just it hurt so bad. And I was like bending over the table just like, what is going on here? Because I knew that my period was not coming that early, and I thought maybe it's some sort of digestion thing, and just went about my time, and didn't really think a whole lot of it. And then I started getting some bad breakouts like a couple days after that, and I was like, really? Like, seriously? Because my skin had been getting a little bit better. And then, let's see, it was 9 days past the date of implantation, which I believe was that day that I got those intense cramps. And that would have been then 13 days past ovulation. I got my positive test. It was the craziest thing. I really I planned on not even testing at all because I was like, I didn't ovulate, nothing's going to happen. And I had wasted so much on taking like the really like high-end pregnancy tests, like the first response and stuff. And I was like, I'm not going to do it this month. But I knew that I had some of these Pregmate cheapy pregnancy tests. And I was like, screw it. I did have that little bit of cramp, maybe that was something, but honestly, I was like, it's nothing. But I just said, well, who cares? I woke up from a nap in the truck. We were in Denver, and I was like, let me just take one real quick, just to see. So I took one, I set it off to the side, and I was so used to like, I would get this close to the pregnancy tests and just like squint at them because I'm like, maybe there's a line, like there's something. And both the other months, there's nothing, not a single thing, not even a faint line. And I was just like squinting. And so this one, I set it off to the side and I was like, screw it, I'll check on it in like 5 minutes or so. And so I'm sitting on the bed. It's maybe like 4 feet away from me on the cooler. And we're just talking, and I look over and I could see it plain as day. Like, I'll insert the picture here. It was a faint line, but to my eyes that were so used to like trying to find any little thing, it might as well have been a neon sign. I just couldn't believe it. It blew my mind. And the fact that it was one of these cheap pregnancy tests that everyone like craps all over is like, oh, they're no good or whatever. Well, it worked for me. So, I remember he was talking, and I glanced over and I saw it, and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I didn't really see that. Surely I didn't see that. So I picked it up and I looked at it and I'm like, it felt like all the wind just like rushed out of me. I couldn't like breathe. And it's funny because we were just talking about how we'd kind of been screwed over at work, and we weren't going to be able to be home as often as we used to be. And, we were like, well, it's probably good that it didn't work out this month because now we have all of this work stuff to, figure out. And then I was like, and it came out like that because I just had like no breath in me or anything. And I was just like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, what did you just say? And I showed him this strip and I'm like, I'm pregnant. And I couldn't believe it. It was crazy. I could not believe it. Like, God really had a sense of humor with that one, because I was so mad, and thinking back on how mad I was at thinking that I wasn't pregnant and then suddenly being pregnant whenever I was convinced that I wasn't. And after all of the work stuff, I was just like, wow, thank you, but thanks a lot. It was just crazy. There's no other word to describe it. It was just a crazy, crazy time. But I could not be more thankful for it. So there is my journey from trying to conceive all the way to my big fat positive pregnancy test. You guys, I was so nervous the whole time because I kept thinking, like, what if it ends up being that we have to try for years and years and years, which happens, you know, and what if bad things happen even if we do get pregnant, and just all the things, you know. And looking back on it, I wish that I had been a little bit less stressed about it. It might have happened sooner if I had been less stressed, but it really couldn't have happened at a more perfect time because a lot of things ended up working out for us in the end afterward. So just really, really good things happened. And luckily we got it on the third try. And I know that there's a lot of women out there that have to try for a lot longer. So if you are one of those women, and I'm sure you've probably tried everything, but if you haven't tried everything that I did, try those things. Or if you are looking into trying to conceive and you haven't started yet, this is what worked for us. I will also say that the first 2 months, I did the whole like legs up in the air for like 10-15 minutes, and clearly didn't work. The third month I was immediately up and just doing stuff around the house, so didn't make a bit of difference for us. So if you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll try to answer them. But I feel like that pretty much covered everything, at least leading up to the positive test. So there you go. And of course, all of my other pregnancy stuff I've been documenting up until, you know, this point and beyond. So check out those videos if you're interested in them. I'll leave a playlist link down below probably. And that is it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it helpful. If you have things that you tried that were successful, leave them down below so that anyone else looking through the comments can also see those. Let's help each other out here, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye.